Oh, hello. So tomorrow is the masterclass that I'm hosting called the Fearless Launch Masterclass. And honestly, I've been wanting to talk about these things for a very long time because I've done a lot of launch management, and yes, I've had some, 6, 7 figure clients who just like launch after launch after launch, and they get they were already pretty good at launching when they hired, right, a launch manager to come in, kind of help tweak and massage the process, just make it better for them and help them manage some of the team, kind of take over some of that management responsibility. So I was doing that a lot um, for the last 3 years. And what it brought up for me was there were things going on behind the scenes, and this conversation has been coming up with other launch managers that I've met through the business, that there are a lot of things that are kept behind closed doors that a lot of these, gurus don't want you to know that happens even inside of their launches, because they're here, they're public facing. And I mean, I was in the performing arts when I was younger, so right, the show must go on, and like what you're seeing here is very calm, serene, and whatever. But sometimes there's literally fires being put out behind the scenes that you don't know about, like Slack messages going back and forth, Voxer messages, like just a lot of things happening behind the scenes. But when you're seeing these gurus pulling off their launches, you're not, like, as a consumer, and you're buying into their programs or what have you, you don't understand the level of support that these people have behind the scenes. So the way that they make it seem is like, oh yeah, launching is so great, or I have this XX launch formula, so you should totally buy it. And what they're not telling you is the reason why that launch formula worked for them is because they coined their own process, right? They really found out what works for them. They probably worked with a lot of, their own high level coaches, work through the kinks. One of the clients that I used to work for inside of her business, she was building other people's brands. And so some of the brands that you see online, I was just telling someone else the other day, like one of my clients the other day, like who some of my clients were. I'm like, oh, you see that brand or whatever, because she had just not invested in something, but she had attended one of their launch mechanisms, like their launch event. And I was like, oh, yeah, like that brand that was built, you know, my client helped build that for them. So there's a lot of things that I've seen behind the scenes. And I think when, like regular people like us that are solopreneurs, we're just starting out, and we literally don't know any better. It's kind of like going to, Cirque du Soleil and like seeing, oh, the beautiful show, but not understanding the training and the rehearsals and everything that's happening behind the scenes to make this event really pop off. All we're experiencing is the end result. So when, you know, people that are like solopreneurs are just starting out, or just getting your feet wet with launches, there's a lot of fear and anxiety that pops up. One, because you probably haven't experienced it before. So, like these fires that pop up, you may not know how to handle them, for one, because you've never experienced it. And also, when these fires pop up, it's just like having a kitchen fire. If you've never experienced a kitchen fire or a larger fire, for me, I worked in an oil refinery and we had incipient fire training. I think it was like annually. And like I fought like really big oil fires. I wouldn't say really big, but it was hot, even like from 100 feet away. But you have to go in. Like I was trained to go in and like fight the fire. And these smaller fires, like that were like our level to fight that didn't require like gearing up in like fire gear to put out. So we got training on that. So when we saw a fire that was small to medium, which actually would be considered big, I think if you saw it on the street, it would be considered a big fire. Um, but it's small in comparison to like a large oil fire, right? We were trained how to fight those little fires. And working with smaller entrepreneurs these days, and just coaching my clients who are solopreneurs. Maybe they have like one or two virtual assistants, like maybe a social media person that posts on their behalf, or they might have like a tech VA that sets things up. So they're not solo, but I would say solo plus VA. It's not technically like a full blown team, right? Um, Things are coming up in their businesses and their launches, and we're talking about the fears, the anxieties that pop up when they are launching. So, first off, what is a launch event? My definition of a launch event is just a big marketing push. I wrote a post maybe last week or the week before about like what really is a launch. I had a client that was like, well, I don't know really where I need support right now. We are doing the onboarding process, and she's like, I don't know where I really need support right now because I'm not really launching my offer yet. And I was like, well, she's going to be speaking on stages. I said, that's also a launch. Like there's promotion involved, right? There's it's launch emails, promotional emails that she has to send out to get on other people's stages. It's like, that's technically a launch event. A speaking event is a launch event. Anything that is a marketing push is, my definition is a launch event, because it could be a webinar, it could be just a soft launch with like an email only launch. It could be a product launch. If you, I don't work with people who have physical products, but if you're launching a physical product and you're selling something new, like that is a whole launch. But there's a lot of stuff that happens up front, right? The marketing, market research, social media promos, like warming up the audience. And a lot of that stuff happens behind the scenes before you even see the launch event. And actually, I was talking to a client yesterday, and we are talking about, she had, hosted her launch event, and she was like, oh, because there's still things happening behind the scenes where you have the launch event and then you have open cart if you're selling something, and not all of these follow-up emails, and the event's not technically over. But she's like, I know the event's not over, but I'm feeling like so exhausted, like I just need a nap right now. And I said, well, that's because that event that you hosted was the launch event, right? You're gearing up, like you poured your heart out, you did the launch event, and then even though the emails are, still getting worked on behind the scenes, that's all happening behind the scenes. So there's no like tech, like that thing that she hosted was the launch event itself. So naturally, right, there was this letdown and the right, the peak and then the letdown. So number one, what is the launch? And we're going to be talking more about this tomorrow on the Fearless Launch Masterclass. But today I wanted to just give you a little bit of a preview what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. So there are 5 fears that I'm going to be covering tomorrow, and steps on how to, one, like reframe it, right? There, we can be afraid of a lot of different things, but it's how we reframe it, it's how we position it, right? As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, right? If you're thinking that it's scary, like your body is going to react. I'm going through a program right now that helps to regulate your nervous system. And if you don't know, where I'm a certified health coach, and then I kind of turned into a business coach, and I like the marrying of the two, like helping to reduce cortisol levels, helping to reduce burnout, but also for entrepreneurs who are launching, right? This is me niching down and just being more specific on who I want to help. but the concepts are still the same. Y- And so some of the fears of launching, this is common to all entrepreneurs. I think because I focus more on financial, another F word. Financial is one of the fears. My bad. Because I focus on females primarily, you know, there are different ways that we as females process and internalize fears, right? I was in a male dominated environment in oil and gas, and I can tell you, right, men, right, they're better at compartmentalization. So let's say like a man was having a launch. Like I'm even in the behind the scenes stuff, I've supported mostly female entrepreneurs. But in the corporate world, I was launching with men, right? So just the way that men and women handle launching, totally different. Men can compartmentalize not just the launch event or like how they feel about their business versus their personal, like they can just separate things, right? What happens in their business doesn't, or whatever happens in their family doesn't affect their business as much. Like they don't make it mean something when something happens in their personal life. Like they don't carry it over into their business unless it's a really big event. Let's say maybe like a grief event, like a major loss, then they would carry it over. But for the most part, men are way better at compartmentalization and like dealing with their emotions separate from their life and their business. So I'll just get into the fears real quick. One, fear of failure. And this is like, right, we worry that we're not good enough. Like the things that we put out are not good enough. So that's one. Or let's say we had a launch that failed in the past. Like, what if it fails again? I was on a mastermind call earlier this afternoon, and there was a girl who came on for coaching, and she was literally hitting up against another glass ceiling. She launched something, a different offer, and it went really well. But she just thought, like, okay, this one went really well, but what's going to happen down the line? Like, that was okay. Like, this was like, how did he put it? This event was like in a bubble, and there's no way she'd be able to duplicate the success of this particular launch. Right? So that there's fear of actual failure. So if your launch failed in the past and it didn't go the way that you wanted, like say you were targeting X result or X amount of clients or X amount of income, revenue, whatever, from this particular launch event, and you didn't hit your launch goals, technically in your mind you failed. And the next time you want to go and launch something, there's a fear that's popping up. And we're going to also talk about how the different archetypes deal with fear differently, right? You have people who have different drivers. So I'd say the powerhouse has a money driver or money and success driver. So if it's a failed launch, right, she's going to want to keep launching, launch again until she gets it right, because her identity is built into every successful or failed launch. Like, she gets her identity from the failure or success. Um, okay, so jumping into the second fear, fear of judgment. Just worrying about what other people think about your business, which can lead to feelings of embarrassment or shame. And like I said, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Even though on paper it looks like everything is good, but yet if it doesn't go the way that we foresaw or the way that we wanted, or if we didn't meet the goals again, right, we're going to get these feelings of embarrassment and shame, and that we're feeling judged. So the next time we want to go out and launch something, right, we're going to be sitting in that fear of judgment. Like, oh, I don't want to be seen. And I'm in a couple of masterminds. There's a lot of people, I mean, me included, like that don't want to be seen. We're afraid of being seen. And especially when our offer is really close to the heart. Like, say, I, c- I mean, I'll just take my book, for example. Like, I wrote a book that was very personal. It was so scary, in fact, that I actually turned it into a fiction book because there are details in there that it felt out of integrity to me to say that this was like an autobiography, but I altered some of the details in there just to keep things personal and private for the people who were involved. So I I wanted to change some of the details in the book. So therefore I launched it as a fiction book. So I had the liberty and the freedom to feel like, okay, this is my story, but it's not, you know, it's like a kind of Kathleen Kennedy my life story. If you get that reference, let me know in the comments. But yeah, so fear of judgment, we all have it. And right, me putting my book out there, putting it out on Amazon, putting it on the website, it's like, phew, like that's a launch event, right? That was a book launch. It's not a coaching offer launch. It's not a, it's, but it's a marketing push to get people to buy the book. So number three, fear of financial loss. And right, when we have a failed launch, a lot of times we put like a lot of time, money, and energy into these launches, right? Whether we hired a team, whether we bought some kind of launch formula and we try to implement it. Um, so many ways that we could have invested time, money, and energy. And if you're familiar with my time wheel, you know that time and money are on opposite sides. And I always say time and money are resources. And if you don't have the time to do it, most likely you will pay money. If it really needs to get done, you just have to throw more money at your problem. When I was managing big, like multi-million dollar projects, we had a lot of money to throw around, I'll be honest. But, you know, problems that needed to be handled, like we had budget constraints, of course, but we also had contingency budgets set up for potential safety and health events that will pop up that we would have to pay for, but we, like you said, we had a contingency fund in order to fund those events and take care of those things, right? So when we have invested a lot of time, money, and energy into a project, especially these soul projects, I know a lot of you are coaches in here, and your offer is your baby, right? It is the thing that you've, like this is your heart and soul and sweat equity. Like you built this thing from the ground up. This thing is 100% you and how you want to show up in the world. And when you launch that thing and it doesn't have the return on investment that you think it should, right? Then we make it mean something about us. And then the next time we want to launch, right? There's these fears that pop up, right? Financial loss. Um, and the last one is fear of giving up. So there are some of you in here that might be thinking, you know, do I want to give up on my business? Like it's not panning out, right? Inflation, the economy, like people just aren't buying right now. The buying patterns of, the world have changed. So just kind of like showing up again, like you're already hitting up against these other fears, like the normal fears of being seen and being judged and like not having the right return on investment. But the last one, it's like, is this even worth it? Right? You had your baby, you put it out there in the world, like your offer baby, you put it out into the world, and say all these other things don't add up, then now you're at the point it's like, well, should I? Shouldn't I? Like maybe I should just give up and go back to my old job. I mean, if you still have access to your old jobs, I know things shifted, in the world the last couple of years. Is going back to work an option for you now, and you feel very sad and you're grieving a possible loss of your business? Just like I was grieving a possible loss of my best friend because she had cancer. Thank God, she's out of the ICU right now, and I just kind of stalking her kids online because I'm not there. I'm gonna see her next week, but I'm not able to be with her right now. So living vicariously through, you know, Instagram feeds is like how I'm getting my information. But she just got out of the ICU. She can drink liquids on her own now. But the fear of losing her, oh, it's huge. I mean, we grew up together. I've known her since what, we're 5 or 6. Like not having someone that you relied on all these years to be there for you, right? Some of that we put in our business, right? This is my business. This is what's going to give me the financial freedom. This is what's going to give me whatever, that you're hoping to get from your business. There's that grief and that loss that happens when the other fears show up and it doesn't turn out like how you wanted it to. So, anyway, tomorrow we're going to talk all about these fears in depth and how it keeps you from having better launches in the future, because we need to really nip this in the bud in order for us to, I want to say, like, come out of our closets. Because sometimes, right, when we do experience fear or trauma and trauma shows up, we react in fight or flight mode, and we don't show up 100% of how we need to show up, right? We have a watered down sense of self and we come out like, I don't really know. Like, because there's this fear filter that we're kind of hiding behind. But when people are buying from you, when they're buying your coaching, they're buying your offer, or whatever you're putting out into the world, right? People want to know who they're working with. And if you're a different person here than you are inside of your containers, there's that dissonance and people will feel that as well. So, wow, this went a lot longer than I intended. It was supposed to be just a brief, hey, what's up? Actually, I haven't seen you guys in a while, haven't gone live in a while, but I wanted to show up today so that you guys know what's happening inside of the master class. And at one, like, I didn't really promote it that much. It's been in the back of my mind and it was on my launch calendar for a couple of weeks. And then, with the whole cancer scare, I took a mental health break and I scaled back, and I wasn't even sure if I wanted to keep this masterclass on my launch calendar, but I said, you know what? You know, YOLO. If I'm gonna, how can I talk about class about fear of launching or launch trauma, and I'm sitting in my own launch trauma or drama? It's like, no, it's fine. Yes, there are like specific parameters that you should have when you're doing a launch. And if we work together, then I can totally give you like my whole launch cheat sheet and all of that. That's what you get inside of the program when you work with me. You get access to the launch. It's like a launch spreadsheet that you can import into your Trello or Asana bases so that you can manage your launches more effectively. Even if it's just you can use the spreadsheet and get your feet wet and not have like not miss anything, because that's another fear that pops up. It's like, oh shucks, and like all of the things weighing on your mind, all the things that you have to do to get your launch going, like that fear of like, did I forget something? I don't know. And so having that checklist will help really alleviate some of that fear. And so, anyway, tomorrow is the Fearless Launch Masterclass, and we're going to be doing that at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon for people on the East Coast. And I just hope to see you there. And if I don't see you there, of course, there's going to be a replay. This is streaming in the group and outside the group. So if you're watching this outside of the group, click on my cover photo and click on the link to join the Facebook group, and you can get in there and get access to the masterclass that's happening tomorrow. Okay, love you guys. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.